We're week 3 of this series called Get Fit. And I don't know if you know, but God has a fitness plan for your life. And that's what we're talking about during this series. God's fitness plan for your life is simply this: to become more like Jesus. That's what it really means to be fit. And so we're taking kind of a holistic approach during this series of just what does it mean for us to become like Jesus in some of those major areas of our life. And so last week, Micah walked us through what does it look like relationally to get fit and to be part of God's plan. And today we're going to talk a little bit more on the financial side. What does it look like for us to get fit financially? I want you to go and open up your Bibles today to Proverbs chapter 21. That's where we're going to get started. I'm going to kind of jump to a couple other passages to make some points this morning, a little more than I probably normally do. Just kind of hang in with me. They'll come up on the screen, and they're also available on the weekly as well. But we're going to take a look at Proverbs 21 in just a moment. As you're turning there, I want to begin by just asking a kind of a general question, and you have to be honest. You can't lie. You're in church, all right? So here's the question. How many of you sometimes, or some of you maybe often, wrestle with, have stress or frustration with your financial scheme or makeup? Yeah. Majority of us do. It's no different for us as well. This is just kind of one of those parts of our lives that some reason can bring stress. It can bring a level of frustration into our lives. Our culture, honestly, if we take a look at it, this has become a normal part of our culture as well. You see, almost everyone you come in contact with is either living paycheck by paycheck. That's become normal. Having monthly payments, normal. Debt, normal. Worry, anxiety, fear over finances, absolutely normal. Sadly, tension in our closest relationships. Marriage in other ways. I mean, my first fight with my wife was actually probably about 3-4 weeks before our wedding. It was centered on finances. See, we went to Kroger's, and we were buying a few groceries to stock the fridge, so when we got able to get married and move in together, we wanted to make sure we had food. And so we would go to the store, and we're walking around, and we're buying groceries, and we came down to the best aisle in the grocery store, which is the ice cream aisle. And we were in that moment, we were like, we got to buy some ice cream. And so I went over and I grabbed my ice cream and I put it in the cart. And she goes, I'm not buying that. I said, that's fine, I'll buy it, you know. She said, no, that's way too much. See, we came from totally two different perspectives when it came to ice cream. She comes from the perspective, you buy whatever's on sale and whatever's the cheapest. I came from a perspective, no, you got to buy what's good. You know, you buy what's right. Who cares about the cost? I'm going to buy Breyers, all natural, no preservatives. That's what I got to buy. And here in the middle of the aisle in Kroger's, we're going at it. Now, the bad thing is I'm uber competitive. The thing that most people don't understand, my wife is just as competitive as I am. So neither of us in the middle of Kroger's are backing down. Over like $2, right? But it's the principle that matters. In the end, I won because now our freezer is full of Breyers. But finances have a way of creeping into all areas of our life, even the most meaningful relationships. It can cause tension. And the thing is, it's become normal. Here's the thing. If that's normal, I don't want normal. Because let's be honest, normal isn't working. It isn't. And so today, as we talk about finances, the main thing I want to talk about and challenge each of us is to live with margin when it comes to our finances. To live with margin. How do we define margin? Here's a simple definition. Go ahead and write this down this morning. This will kind of be our premise when we're talking about margin. Margin is simply the amount available beyond what is necessary. So what is available to me right now beyond what is actually necessary? Now, let's talk about this in some simple math terms. Let's say you bring $3,000 home a month, and you have $2,500 of bills each month. How much margin do you have? You have $500 of margin every month, meaning it's left over beyond what is necessary. Now, let's say you bring home $3,000 a month, and you spend $3,000 a month in bills. How much margin do you have then? That's not a trick question. Zero. So my junior hires got a whole lot quicker, guys. Come on. So 0. What if I bring home $3,000 a month, but I spend $3,500 a month? That's a whole nother conversation, all right? Well, we'll talk about that another time. But that's what we're talking about when we talk about having financial margin. So what is financial margin? What does this actually look like? Here's what it looks like. It means having money left over at the end of the month. Did you know that's possible? It's actually a good thing. It means you have money available to help somebody when they're in need. It means that you can give and be generous without having to be stressed out because you just gave something away. It means that you have money to be able to enjoy things that you want to enjoy. Sometimes having financial margin means that we actually have the ability to buy some margin in other areas of our life. For instance, time. There is a wise way to manage money, and there is a foolish way to manage money. Let's take a look at something that Solomon writes in Proverbs chapter 21. Now, Solomon, reminding you who Solomon was, second wisest man to walk the face of the earth. The entire book of Proverbs is just full of great wisdom, sayings, things that you can run and base your life off and is going to help your life tremendously. So in Proverbs chapter 21, verse 20, this is what Solomon had to say. It says, precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling. And kind of the idea behind this, when you look at it in the original language, means that it's being stored up for the future. So it's not just something there and then it's gone, but it's there and it's accumulating and it's being stored up. It says, so precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling. And then he says, but a foolish man devours it. In the house of a wise, there's margin. But the foolish person uses up everything that they have. They devour it. Notice, it's interesting in this verse. The Bible doesn't say that in a house of the wealthy, you find margin. Nor does the Bible say that in the house of a two-income family, you'll find margin. It doesn't say that when you make 6 figures, you'll have margin. No, what it says is that in the house of the wise, there's always more than enough. But there is a wise way to manage money that God has placed in your hands and entrusted you to manage. And then there's also a foolish way in which we can handle money that God has entrusted us to. You can kind of think of playing out of 2 different scenarios, 2 different families. One family really lives under their means. They're doing everything they can to just set some money aside. They really think through whatever they're spending their money on. Is this really the best thing that we can do with this? And then on the flip side, there's the other ones that go, man, we just got to have that. And so they just use everything they have when the money comes in, as quickly as it comes in, it goes out. And there's 2 different ways to kind of look at this. And it's important for us, if we want to get fit in this area of our lives, for us to self-identify, where am I at? How do I operate? Which family would I most associate with? We get another sense in the New Testament of these 2 families, these 2 scenarios being played out. This is in 1 Timothy chapter 6. So saying the same thing, but just in a different way. 1 Timothy chapter 6, starting in verse 6. It's going to come up here on the screen. Just follow along with me. It says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. Let me just stop there. That's important for many people in the room right now to grasp. Godliness with contentment is great gain. That's huge. It says, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. So we're born with nothing, and guess what? We're going to die with nothing. We don't get to take it with us. That's reality. That's the world. That's life. But if we have food and clothing, and these, we will be content. Hey, learn to be content when your basic needs are taken care of. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation. That's important for us to also recognize. Those who desire to be rich fall into temptation. It's not wrong to be rich, but when that becomes your sole pursuit, it becomes a great temptation in your life. And you need to be aware of this. It says, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For, and here's that line that many of us know, For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. Not money, but the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from their faith. Get that. People have craved this so much. They crave money. They crave this idea. They want to be rich. They want to have this. They want that. That they will literally sacrifice their faith for that. So it is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. What are some of the pangs that we see today? If we're honest, what are some of those? We see debt causing tremendous pain, financial pressure causing pain, stress and financial tension all centered on money causing tremendous pain. We see people unable to actually enjoy their blessings that they have because they're so worried about their money and financial situation in its current form. What's the problem here? The problem is people have sold out and traded their margin, their flexibility, security, and peace for material things that don't last. Why does this happen? Simply put, our culture is lying to us. Our culture is telling us that this is the definition of happiness. The way that our culture defines happiness is simply this. Happiness is more than I currently have. Happiness equals more than I currently have. So when I look out there and I see all these things and I realize, well, I don't have that. If I had that, my life would be easier and it'd make me a whole lot happier, so I'm going to go get that. I'm not going to even worry about the cost. I need that and I need it now. I mean, that's what the world's telling us. Whatever you have right now, not enough. If you have something else, that's when you're going to be happy. If I just had a little bit more, if I just had that thing, then I'll be happy. Our culture tells us all the time, you deserve it. You can't afford it, just make payments. Get it now. It's going to make you happy. You got to have it, and you got to have it right now. You're not happy because you don't have enough, so you know what? You need to go get it. I mean, it's in so many different layers that this is being told us all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down, I've done premarital counseling and even, kind of preventative marriage counseling with new marrieds in their 20s. And they're doing everything they possibly can to leverage themselves to live at the lifestyle that their parents currently are living, neglecting the fact that it took 30 years of hard work and savings for them to get to where they actually are. But for some reason we think, well, I got to have it and I need it now. Why? Because we believe all this stuff is the thing that's going to make us happy. And so all of a sudden, in a world I live, we've got all these people that, you know what? We got to have a 4-bedroom house and 3 baths. Got to drive a very nice car, so that I can go have a nice dinner whenever I want to have it. The whole time they're fighting about money on the way there, right? The crazy thing is that many of us are more blessed than we ever actually realize that we are blessed with. So what happened? What happened in this situation? Most of us lifestyled our way straight past financial margin. Meaning, it's really not an income problem. It's a lifestyle problem. As your income goes up, lifestyles tend to trail behind. We have no margin because we have a lifestyle problem. The target is always moving. Let's say the target is to be rich. And when I can make this amount of money or I have this amount of money in my bank account, then I can relax. And then we get there, well, not quite the way I thought. Now it's here. Now I got to go pursue this. See, the target is always constantly moving. And Jesus talks about why this happens to us. He says this in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19, just 2 important verses. But man, if we could learn to apply this every day in our life into how we see the world and the finances, I promise you life would go a whole lot better for you in this financial realm. Verse 19, he says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. Get this, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Let me say it again. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a moment. I need a volunteer. Would somebody be willing to volunteer? Put your hand up for me. Oh, come on. All right. Come on up here, Michael. So I know Michael. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for coming on up. Come on up. Make your way up the stage. Guys, give Michael a round of applause. Michael had no idea he was coming up on the stage this morning. But I appreciate you being a good sport. Now, Michael, here's the thing. If you don't follow my directions, this whole thing's going to fall apart, and it's going to be embarrassing to me, and it's going to be embarrassing to you. All right? So can we make this work? So here's the thing, because I know your wife has told me this. You're all heart. So you're heart man. So you're going to be my heart. Okay? I'm money. So wherever I go, you need to follow me. You got it? Think you can do that? So what Jesus is helping us understand in this principle is that wherever I place my money, my heart will always follow. It doesn't matter where I go. It doesn't matter what I invest myself into. If I want to invest myself into my kids' education, and I know that I'm going to set aside a whole lot of money, guess what's there? My heart always follows with that. We oftentimes get this backwards. We think, well, my heart is going to be here, so then I'm going to invest my money. But what Jesus says is that happens completely the opposite way. For some of us, it's our kids' sports. I place all the money, all my time, all my energy in my kids' sports, and then guess what follows me? My heart follows me. Same thing happens with my car. So, right? So, you're doing a good job. When I go out and I buy a new car, I don't want to park it by other cars. Like, I'm going to park it far away. I'm going to make the walk because I'm afraid that somebody else is going to pull in next to me and that they're going to open their door and they're going to bump my door and I'm going to notice every single dent that new car now has. Why? Because I've invested my finances in it and now my heart follows closely behind that as well. Thanks, man. You can go ahead and grab a seat. Give Michael a round of applause. What Jesus wants us to understand is where I place my money, my heart always follows. Those are the things that become most important to me. So where are you investing your heart? What's most important to you? Your bank account will tell you. It doesn't lie. But here's the magical thing. We can actually redirect our heart by what we invest in. We can make an abrupt shift. We can go, you know what? I'm pulling my heart in the wrong direction. And I need to change that. You can actually change where your heart focuses based on where you place your finances. Here's the interesting thing I find out. When you look at American Christians give away 2% of their income a year. 2%. The thing that blows me away, it's no different between Christians and non-Christians when you actually look at the giving records. 2%. That means about 98% goes to the world. I know that was very difficult math, but I got it. 2% is given away. 98% goes to the world. That means that 98% of our heart is moving towards the world and what the world has to offer us. And then we wonder why. We just want more of the world and feel like God isn't satisfying us. It's because this is not an income problem. This is a spiritual problem. We actually think more is going to make us happy. And that's not true. So what do we need to do? We need to begin to create financial margin. We need to reprioritize our heart towards what is most important. And here's the simple answer. Spend less than you make. and you'll be okay. But for some reason, that's a hard thing for us to grasp. So let me give you kind of 3 ways to kind of break it down into your life of how you can begin to discipline yourself, to move your heart towards what really matters, but also create some financial margin. The first thing is this: give first. Second, save second. Third, live on the rest. Give first, save second, live on the rest. We oftentimes look at this backwards. We think, what I have right now, I'm just going to learn to live on this. And then what happens is, well, the refrigerator breaks down, and I don't know how I'm going to make it because my savings isn't where it needs to be. So, well, I can make payments. So I just make payments. And then we find ourselves, well, you know what? I would love to give to that, but I have no money to give. Here's the thing. In order for us to be made into the image of God, to become more like Jesus, that means that you and I need to become generous. We need to learn what it means to live generously. Why? God's a generous God. If we call ourselves Christians, if we believe in the grace of God, if we believe in what Jesus actually came and he did and he accomplished on the cross and in his resurrection, you get this. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave. We have a generous God. So if we have a generous God and we want to be made in his image, if we want to be fit in every area of our lives, we better become generous too. But I know, because I've fallen in the same trap. When I push giving to the end, oftentimes I get to the end of the month and he gets the leftovers. If there's anything left over, well, here's $5. That's a tip. And so what we have to learn to do is reprioritize our life around what really matters. And we have to reverse the way that we think. Give first. Just make up in your mind right now, what does that look like? If you've been giving nothing, give something. Give something. Start somewhere. If you're giving something, consider moving towards what I would call a significant giver, meaning make it percentage part of your income. Just plan on it. Maybe it's 2%, maybe it's 3% every month. You know what? I'm just going to write that right now. We're going to give that away. And then save. And then whatever you have left, live on it. You're going to create margin if you do this. If you've been giving significantly, consider becoming a tither, what the Bible talks about, which means literally 10%. 10% of your income you're giving away. For some of you, like me, I grew up in the church. I was taught from a young age, tithing is just what you do. Always been given 10%. You know what? You can go beyond that. I call it sacrificial. Melissa and I, we give beyond 10%. Because we want to grow in this area of our lives. We want to orientate our lives towards what really matters most in our life. And some remarkable things begin to take place when we actually prioritize God in our lives. I want to talk a little bit about that. If we learn to make God number one in our lives, I promise you, you're not going to be disappointed with where your life goes. You won't in any other area of your life. Doesn't mean you're not going to have hardship. Sure, hard things happen. That's part of life. But I promise you won't be disappointed in the end result. So when we make God number one, what happens when he becomes number one in our lives? The first thing is simply this. You're going to experience God's blessing in your life. There are multiple verses that talk about this. Let me just read a couple of them to you. Proverbs 11, verse 25 says, whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and the one who waters will himself be watered. So when you're a blessing to others, you too are going to be blessed. God loves it when we become generous like him. He's going to lavish it on you. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, starting in verse 7, it says, each one must give as he has decided in his heart. So this is a decision that you need to make. He says, but don't be reluctant about it, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. God wants you to give out of joy. He wants it to be a fun thing for you. And when this becomes normal and part of your lifestyle, I'm telling you, you can have a lot of fun in living generously. And being generous moves beyond just in our finances. Finances helps orientate our hearts. But when you forgive somebody, you're being generous. It can be in your area of time, giving of your time to things. It really needs to encompass all of these areas of our lives. And then it's interesting, in verse 11 there of chapter 9, he says, you will be enriched in every way to be generous in every way, which through us we will produce thanksgiving to God. So he said, we will be enriched, we will be blessed in every way of our lives, so that we can continue to be a greater blessing in the lives of other people. It's not just so we can get more. That's not the purpose. The purpose is we live generously, and God's going to be generous back to us, so then we can be more generous. It's kind of a fun cycle when you begin to think about it. Psalm 112, verse 5 said, it is well with the man who deals generously and lends, who conducts his affairs with justice. In other words, the person that lives generously is going to be blessed. I mean, think about this from a practical standpoint. Again, God is a generous God. So he likes it when we're reflecting his image in the world around us. When we live generously, gives us the opportunity to expose other people to the generosity of our God. I think about it this way. I kind of play around with my kids in this, trying to develop them to learn to live generously. For years, one of my late night snacks has been I'll pour a little bit of Cheerios into a bowl and I'll throw some chocolate chips on top. When I'm lazy, I just throw chocolate chips in the bowl. But my kids over the years have kind of embraced the same habit. And there's a lot of evenings that we'll have a bowl, and my kids have started adding other things, Cheez-Its and pretzels, and they just make their own kind of big mix. But you can never forget the chocolate chips. And over the years, as they've gotten older, sometimes I'll just throw some chocolate chips in a cup and I'll test them. I'll say, hey. And they'll have 15 chocolate chips in the bottom of their cup or something like that. I say, hey, can you give me 2 of those? And you see like the dilemma on their face right there. There's like, Dad, these are my chocolate chips. Like, if I give you 2, that means I have 2 less. And you can just see the tension growing in their face. The whole time, they don't understand. They don't remember the fact, I've got a 5-pound bag of chocolate chips that I bought at Sam's Club hiding in the pantry. Like, if you give me 2, there's a high likelihood I'm going to give you 10 back. Because I want you to get this. I want you to understand the importance of living generously in every area of your life. And sometimes I've seen them go, you know what? Here, Dad, you can just take half of them. I'm bringing that bag out when that takes place, I'm like, here, you can have the whole bag. I'll go down to Sam's and buy more. What we sell God short in understanding how he operates in the world. We read it earlier. None of this we brought into the world, and none of it we're going to take away with us. We're simply his manager. These are things that he's entrusted us to. You don't own anything. All that you have is simply on loan. And so he wants us to learn to be generous. The Bible teaches the rule of the tithe is a great principle to begin to help learn this. Meaning 10%. That we just literally set aside 10% of our income. Trusting that God can do more with 90% than what we can do with 100%. And it just trains us. It helps us train our heart to be focused on the things that are most important in life. And God will take care of you in the midst of that. It's a tangible way to honor God, to grow in our faith when we learn to begin to do this. Why 10%? Why is that a biblical principle that we see taught? It's just enough. It's just enough you feel it. It's just enough that you have to kind of reorientate your daily living in order to make it a priority. God doesn't want to be an afterthought. He wants to be the first thought. And so this is a practical way that we can move our heart towards the things that really matter in life. And I can tell you from personal experience that when you focus and you make him a priority in your life, you will not be disappointed. Sure, there are seasons that you sacrifice in order to do that, but I can tell you, we've never missed out on life. Never. What I've learned, not just from reading through the Bible, but I've learned it from personal experience in my life and even in the interactions of other people's lives. When God guides, he always provides. Wherever God guides you, he's going to provide for you. And sometimes it shows up in the most amazing ways. I'm not saying that when you give 10%, God's going to throw 100% back at you. No. It doesn't always show up even financially. But it shows up in blessing. It shows up knowing that, you know what, I made God a priority in my life today. And that brings a great contentment. I mean, Melissa and I, even about 4 years ago, we felt like God was stirring our hearts to move towards adoption. We had no idea how that would go. And I can tell you, when I saw the price tag of what adoption was today, I gasped. Like, you got to be kidding me. There was no way we had that money. But we felt the stirring in our heart that God was saying, you need to be obedient. Trust me in this. I'm guiding you to this. I will provide for it. And I can tell you, each and every step of the way, we've got to the end of the month and we had no debt. We got through the entire adoption, finalized it in December, and I have no outstanding debt. Why? God provided. It wasn't me. We didn't have the income. God did it. But you miss out on some of those things when you don't make him the priority, because he wants to get your attention. Our God is a jealous God. He wants what's best for you. And he knows the reason why he's a jealous God is he knows the thing that's best for you is him. And so he's going to fight until he gets the opportunity to be number one in your life. I don't want to have to fight God. So I'm just going to humbly go, yeah, you get it. See? I'm showing you, God. And prioritize my life around it. The number two thing that happens in our lives when we make him a priority in our life and in our finances is you're going to find contentment. You'll find contentment. Proverbs 15:16 says this. It says, better is a little with fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. Just think about that for a moment. Read back through that verse. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. The sad thing is that there are very few people in our world that actually believe that that is true. Godliness with contentment is great gain. When you see God first, when you find yourself getting closer to God, guess what happens?
It's 12 o'clock.
Okay, God, I'll finish up quick. That has never happened to me before, so I'm getting to the end. But the closer you get to God, the more you realize, I don't need all those things. I don't need that. Because why? God is enough. He's enough. I don't need to pursue those things. I don't need to go into debt for that thing because I've learned to make him a priority. He is going to provide, and now he is my blessing. And in the end, you find great contentment. The third thing that happens to us is your focus is directed towards the things that really matter. Your focus gets directed towards the things in life that really matter. Proverbs 8:18 through 19 say, riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. It says, my fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. What God is trying to help us understand when we read that verse, riches and honor are with me. It says, my fruit is better than gold. What God is saying to us is that what he has to offer us is so far beyond anything the world wants to give you. They don't even compare. And so why in the world do we sell out all of our margin, our flexibility, all these things for material things in this world that aren't going to last? God has given himself to us. He offers to walk with us in every area of our life, not just in our finances. But the requirement from each and every one of us for this to become a reality in our lives is we got to actually make him the priority in that area of our life. Again, we have a generous God. He gave everything. He gave his son, his one and only. Walked through this messy world, hung on a cross, died for us, rose again with great hope. We have a generous God. If we want to get fit in our finances, we too have to learn how to be generous as well. Would you pray with me? Lord, we are incredibly grateful for who you are and that you are a generous God. You're a big God. Nothing surprises you. Lord, you tell us that everything on the hill, the cattle, they're all yours. Just as you provide for the sparrows and the trees, Lord, you provide for us, even beyond. Lord, thank you for loving us. God, this is a lesson that I know in my heart I've got to constantly come back and repeat, refocus. God, I pray for each and every one of us that we would learn to make you a priority in our lives. We, in doing so, would experience your blessing. We experience what contentment can really feel like, look like. That you would redirect our focus towards the things that matter most in this world, realizing that really you are more than enough. God, give us the courage to take the steps that we know we need to make in order to this become a reality of our lives, I pray. In your name.